All right, here we go. Let's let. I'm going to bring them all in, and then, Carl Martin, do you want me to end the waiting room, just let people come in, or do you want to admit them as they come?
I'll admit them.
Okay. Here we go. Nice. Welcome, everybody. I do have one request while you're getting your audio and everything set up. If we could see your faces, that's it. Turn on those videos. Don't be shy. You can see how dressed up we are. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Lance, I know you. You better open your video. He's probably cooking, knowing Lance. All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Reed Baumgarten. I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer of UWC-USA, and today we're going to have a fun and very tasteful conversation. The topic is very appropriate for the world we're currently living in. Some of you may not know, starting on Thursday, the students on campus, along with high schools around the region, including Mexico, are going to be involved in two-day workshops on overcoming polarization. And we thought we'd bring it to the community before that conference starts and have our own twist of conversation on finding common ground with food. With that, couple ground rules. If you have any background noise, please manage your sound. You can mute, but we have a nice intimate audience, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. With regards to questions, please submit your questions in the chat. That way the panelists can take a look at them. I can help group them. But at the same time, if you are really feeling a hunger, sorry about all the puns, to ask your questions, feel free to ask a question as well. You can raise your hand or just send that little handshake or whatever you want to do to get the question in. So with that, without wasting any more time, because we have four amazing panelists with us tonight, I'm going to do quick introductions and then we'll get into the conversation. So joining us is Ana Araceli Garcia Escobar. So Araceli, who she goes by, actually is a skilled chef with experience ranging from Italian dining to high-end cafeterias. I didn't expand my page enough. There we go. Get it all in. Is known for transforming simple ingredients into flavorful, creative meals. Currently, Araceli is the chef manager at UWC-USA. She brings a passion for using food as a bridge to connect diverse communities. For us that were students here, you know how important food is, so she has a really important job. Joining Araceli is Liam O'Hara, Araceli's other half, Araceli being the better half, of course. And Liam is an educator with nearly 2 decades of experience. Liam teaches economics and global politics while also fostering connections through food, specifically by hosting student meals and reimagining cultural family dinners as gastro-diplomacy. He uses the shared experience of food to build community and understanding. And if you ever have a chance to come to campus when we have a cultural dinner, it is so worth it. So much fun. All right, next we have Tal Oren Cohen, a food industry consultant and founder of Bailey Cravings Catering. Tal specializes in Mediterranean cuisine and sustainable food systems, combining over 20 years of industry expertise with her doctoral research in strategy and innovation. She mentors food entrepreneurs and promotes global food sustainability. And our final is Susie Gott Segre. Did I pronounce that all right? Close?
That's really close.
Very good. A chef, author, a forager from the Blue Ridge Mountains, Susie blends culinary arts with music and storytelling to create immersive food experiences. As the founder of the Seasonal School of Culinary Arts, she celebrates the deep connections between food, culture, and the senses, and is also a parent of an alumnus. So we have the entire UWC community represented, which is so awesome. So with that, let's dive into this tasty discussion. So the first question I'm going to shoot to Liam. There you go. So eating together builds community. And as I mentioned, everyone else, you do these cultural dinners. Cooking together can create an even more community. Can you share any stories about a time where you've seen people who might otherwise be opposite sides of an issue create a stronger bond while cooking together?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
I think that whole thing of eating together builds community. I feel like this is like the quintessential UWC experience. Whenever I talk to my students, or recent, or even alum, um, from years ago as well. Everyone's, what do you remember about UWC? What is it? And it's like, oh, it's those meals we shared in the day room at 2 in the morning, or those kind of random moments. And so I think food is just such an essential part of the human experience, but especially so in the UWC, because it's a great way that people share where they're from, and share who they are, and who their families are, and what their experiences were. And so just this year, I do advisory dinners as a way where my, six or seven advisee students, they all get to, cook a meal once a month. They and their food and their family and their experiences kind of get to shine through. And it's funny, this year I have a Turkish student, an Armenian student, and we sit down and shared a Turkish meal as our first family advisory meal that we did this year. And it's always a way to kind of build connection across, a group of kids that are randomly thrown into my group. And the same thing happens on Project Week trips as well, bringing random kids together, and we cook together, and then it becomes like a group. We become, a lot closer after each of those meals. So it definitely has held true in my personal life as well, as food bringing people together and connecting people.
Thank you. Tall, could you share a story?
Yeah, I can share one from the UWC and one more recent. From the UWC, being Jewish, it was my opportunity to try and fast during the month of Ramadan with my fellow students, which is something that I probably would never have been able to do. And going through that with the Muslim students on campus was incredible, and including the meals at the end of the night, or the end of the day, rather. And more recently, when we got together to talk about this panel, I found out that Susie, who's based in North Carolina, was on the other end of an event we did in upstate New York. It was an event put together by a chef that was called Chefs Unite, where we did a fundraising after Hurricane Helena, to help food businesses that were impacted in North Carolina. And I found out that Susie was one of those businesses, even though I hadn't known her before this panel. So I think that is part of really coming together, and people in other places who find a way to come together and share food and share time together, for different reasons. In this case, it was to help businesses that were impacted by Helena.
Thank you. Susie, could you share a story?
Well, I'm so grateful for Chef Samantha, who made that happen, and for bringing the two of us together even before this evening. This brings a good point to mind. Food helps bridge crises. So after a blitz or a flood or a fire, after a death or a birth, what do? We bring food to our neighbors. And be we Democrats, Republican, Marxist, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, Christian, whatever, we all eat. One thing in this uncertain world that we all have in common is that we all eat. So I take that to be a tremendous bridge between countries, cultures, religions, you name it.
And Araceli.
Well, for me, I have the experience with the students cooking in the kitchen. We have a group called Cultural Dinner, and we have a group of students come into the kitchen, and they share the meal from their country, and they do the whole menu, and then come in the kitchen and prepare the whole recipes that they have from their families, or sharing from the country that they know. And it's very important for them be cooking for all the other students. And the same thing with the kitchen staff, like they are very happy to be with the students cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, the energies in those kitchens for those cultural family meals is crazy. It's so fun. Like you get, we did a car, the African and Caribbean family, a couple of months ago, and had like at one point about 30 students in the kitchen. They take over the music, and there's dancing and singing, and the calf workers are like, "What is going on in here?" So they're like equal parts annoyed and loving it. But it's a super cool connection for those kids and the calf workers as well.
Well, Liam, you actually segued right in perfectly into our next question, about really looking at connection. I mean, a well-designed culinary experience engages all the senses. You had mentioned dancing, you had mentioned music. We do that every night at our meal at our home, of course. But no, I mean, how can this help people feel more connected to one another, this well-designed culinary experience? Susie, can I start with you?
Absolutely. Well, the senses are a portal to the mind. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. We need all of our senses to prepare a good meal and to appreciate what has been set before us. When we open up our senses, we open our souls to the souls of those around us. When we experience the ripe red sweetness of a strawberry or the lush savory succulence of a summer ripe tomato, we have the desire to share that joy with others. And that can open up boundaries between strangers and forge new paths to friendships.
Thank you. Paul, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I see this every day as a caterer. I cater a lot for Cornell University, and the student body there, similar to the UWC, is very international. And I see that when they come together, if they have conferences or meetings, when the food comes out, the whole atmosphere changes completely. All of a sudden, they share food together, they share stories, they share memories. A lot of them, some will know, like when I come with Mediterranean food, some will know the food, some will not know the food. But you can really see how this really is a bridge between people to connect at a different level than they might have 5 minutes ago at a conference or a workshop. And I definitely feel that also when we cater other events in the community. We do Taste of the Finger Lakes here, where businesses come together and showcase their flavors. And food brings so much curiosity and so much fun. People are happy when they try, and especially when they get to try things they might not have tried before.
No, my camera's not.
Was there anything else, Paul? I apologize. So
no, it's good.
Oh, perfect. Araceli, your thoughts on the connection?
I will say that in our kitchen, we have a different menus, right? And for me, it's like giving that little extra, putting some like salsas or that made your food elevate a little bit more and have that experience for everybody to be rich.
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that I've noticed at the cafeteria that they do here so well. Like Araceli and her staff, like they're picking up on her ideas and her momentum, but they love to make all kinds of different salsas or special condiments, from pico de gallos to like chimichurris and a chipotle mayo that is like people ask for the recipe for on burger day and stuff. But like it just takes food to a whole new level, and like lets people to kind of customize it a little for their own. And that becomes like a lot of times the centerpiece of the conversation, at the tables, at the dining tables, is like you can sit with someone that you have nothing in common with and be able to sit down, and at the very least you can talk about the food, how good it is, how bad it is, oh, it's over salted, oh, it's delicious, like you can, and so it's at a super basic level, it's an amazing icebreaker and something that really allows people to connect to one another over a shared experience, that you're sitting there. And it's nice when it's shared, but also customizable to your own tastes and interests. So I think our CAF does an awesome job of that.
Awesome.
I would like to add to that for anyone who is listening in tonight who's not familiar with the United World Colleges, and I know that most of you probably are, but I see a couple of names that I think may be discovering UWC tonight through this conversation, that each school is 200 students, correct me if I'm wrong. And within each school, there is a huge amount of diversity. So I think UWC-USA has close to 95 different countries represented this year. Is that correct? So that's enormous. That's basically 2 people per country if it happened to even out this way. And so the backgrounds are incredibly diverse. And Araceli, my hat's off to you for trying to please that many different palates in each meal. I think about the different spices and things that typify different countries. Different regions of the world are known for different seasonings. The Italians might favor oregano and garlic. The French love their butter and truffles. Latin America has its jalapenos and salsas. In China, it's dumplings and rice. Russia, it's caviar and vodka if you have that kind of a budget, which college students do not. But or high school students do not. But in any case, it's a tremendous challenge. And it leads me to think that there are certain foods, surely, that everyone eats. And it's a fun task to see if you can come up with some of those foods.
Thank you. But you kind of bridge into a conversation about, taking risk and spicing it up. And I just like to pull this out a little bit further. And I'm going to throw this one out to the audience as well. If there's any personal experiences with trying something new that you don't feel comfortable sharing. I know I'm risking a little bit, but we also like to hear from some people in the audience. But to our panelists, and Tal, I'll start with you on this one. When you're taking risks, culinary risks, or trying something new, how do you approach this with your audience?
I'll actually say it from the other side, not as someone who's making the food, but one of my experiences with sharing food that I was very uncomfortable with was during a business trip to Thailand. And I am not good with seafood and very, very difficult with fish, but anything that has legs and stuff coming out of it is totally not something that I know how to handle. And during a business trip, we were invited to a very beautiful seaside restaurant, and the hosts brought this insane amount of seafood that was never ending. I cannot tell you what was there because I could not recognize anything on the table, but I was very brave and ate through the whole dinner. And every time I took a bite of something, they put more and more on my plate. And so, again, coming together, respecting others, wanting to share an experience, I went out of my comfort zone. And it was amazing. It was a lot of flavors and textures that I would never choose to try. But I felt so grateful to be part of this incredible meal that was so important to our hosts and so important to the people there. It is something I will never forget.
Thank you. Liam, curious, because you kind of touched on it with the cultural dinners and everything, and observing.
Yeah.
Liam, Araceli, the two of you. When you're looking at taking risks with these students, because the students, they're a tough group. They're a very tough group. How do you guys approach it?
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this school, apart from, well, there's a lot of great things about the school, actually. I won't list them all off. I love this place, but one of my favorite things is, I think I talked about a little bit of advisory dinners when I host kids over, and then they'll I'll sit down with that student and we'll get to plan a menu together, and so they'll be, oh, I want to do this. So we just did, actually we did French food a little bit of like
Couple weeks
was that a
ago.
week and a half ago with my French advisory, and we actually combined with another advisory group who was going to run some grill, but she was like, I want to make buckwheat savory crepe. And I want to make what it was, some ratatouille, but it's not ratatouille. It's a different version of ratatouille. And like we were calling it ratatouille, but there's a different preparation. And like it turned into a whole experience of learning some of the nomenclature of different dishes and what riles people up, which is
And she
super
was
fun.
saying when you do the sliced vegetables are just because of that's the movie. No, we don't do it that way. It has to be diced.
Yeah, if it's diced, that's ratatouille. If
Yeah.
it's sliced into nice rounds and put into a casserole in a beautiful salad, it's not ratatouille, it's something else. And I'm like, well, the movie and everything, but okay. But my favorite, I just love learning new dishes and learning new things. And so like with students, I've had, students from Georgia who are going to cook them. I'm like, I've never, it was not that long ago that I found out Georgia was a country and not just a state, thanks to my American geography background, but so like I love exploring new cultural dishes, new foods, new spices, new flavors, and I'm like, oh, cool. And then I find ways that I can use that into my own cooking. So from my experience here, that's been my favorite thing, to do, is to try new things and see how they work and see how flavors and how they think about flavors and how they think about things that I thought, oh, that's a sweet ingredient. That wouldn't go in here. And like, oh no, that goes in a great savory dish in this way. And like, it's opened my mind and my spice cabinet quite a bit. It's been awesome.
I think for in the kitchen, it's like I have a couple years ago, we were trying to do recipes for jackfruit, trying to be more creative with a vegan section, and we were doing our best with grape jackfruit, and we found out that the students didn't like that much that, and it was a cute student. They make a nice creative picture saying like jackfruit is not good, never do this again. So since then we take out of the menu the jackfruit, but things like that we learn, like what students like the most, what is not working in the kitchen for them. So it's really nice to have those feedbacks too.
Susie, how do you approach bringing people together and taking risks?
Well, I welcome people into my home and farm setting at least once monthly from March through October. And it's different, of course, every month. In March, there are ramps and morels and all the little spring ephemerals that are coming out, these little tiny wildflowers, most of which are edible. And we go out and we identify things and we bring back basketfuls of sometimes ingredients that nobody's ever seen. And we play with them in the kitchen and then we all sit down to eat. So I think that in this kind of threefold celebration of food, the gathering, the preparing, and the sharing, I've witnessed students discover joys within themselves that they didn't know existed. Somebody said, if you really want to make a friend, go to someone's house and eat with him, because the people who give you their food give you their heart. And I feel like that's what we're doing when we cook. We are just handing out our heart on a plate.
Thank you. So in the chat, there are actually a couple questions that are on this subject of risk taking. Well, one is more, it's about face fish pie, which I'm very curious to learn about. Well, that's in a sec. But the first one is that from Hendrik. Hendrik, I'm not sure if this question is directed at any one individual in particular. If it is, but I'm kind of assuming it may be directed towards Susie, but I'll approach Susie first, but if anyone else wants to add on. The question is, what's your experience exposing modern people, obtain food at the supermarket, with eating wild game? Do you have a favorite recipe for venison?
Oh, yes. Well, surprisingly, so many people who might have a preconceived idea that they don't like this or that, and the next thing, because they haven't tried it, when they try it, they love it. And so this goes kind of in many different directions. When I lived in France for 20 years and I did something like a zucchini bread, people said, you don't put vegetables in bread, or you don't put vegetables in cake, a carrot cake. That was just really weird to the French. But if I served it without telling them what it was, they loved it. And then, afterwards we'd have the conversation. So it's often like that with a wild game. For instance, when I wrote Appalachian Appetite, which is a collection of recipes from up and down the Appalachian chain, I put in a recipe for possum pate because I had possums in my chicken house, so I had to do something with them. So I put them in the pot. They make a great pate. They taste like rabbit, but most people don't think they're going to like it when they first hear about it. And the same can be true for venison or for so many other things. I love to do a kind of a venison boeuf bourguignon, venison bourguignon. Leave out the beef. So something that stews for a long time in a pot with onions and wine and herbs. And, you really can't go wrong with that. Serve it up with some fresh taters, and taters being what we call potatoes in my part of the country. You really can't go wrong.
And
At campus, we have a lot of skunks. Do we have anything, Liam, or Sally, that we
I
can do
don't
with
have a
skunks?
skunk recipe. I do want to shout out Ben Gillick, the E-Systems teacher here, who has introduced me to elk red chili, like a New Mexico carne adobada, basically. And he made it's awesome, man. It's a pot of basically kind of stewed red chili. Like I think that's classic New Mexican fare there, and throw some elk in it. It's absolutely delicious. Some pinto beans and a fresh tortilla. Awesome.
Okay, I'm getting hungry, but Nikki, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear what a face fish pie is. And is it from Russia, if I understood your chat comment?
Yeah, it basically was open face, a dough crust, and cooked fish in a kind of custardy top. I guess you could say kind of like a cross between a quiche with cooked fish in it. At this long distance, I mean, that was 50 years ago. I don't remember what, the details of it, so much as just being amazed that taking that definition of dough wrapped around something, every country, every cuisine had a food that fit that, whether it was tamales or pierogi or the Russian fish pie.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Kind of taking a step back, I mean, you could hear the joy and you see the smiles as we're kind of reminiscing these recipes. The question I have for the panelists is that, when you create these positive culinary experiences for people, they clearly feel gratitude. How does that gratitude help people overcome their differences or differences around them? And Tal, can I start with you?
Well, I think that food is the easiest barrier to overcome differences between people. I think that it is something that really brings us together in a much easier way than if we try to necessarily get to discuss things that might be harder to discuss between us. I can say that one of the traditions that I grew up on as a kid and I brought with me to Ithaca when we came here many years ago was a tradition that the Moroccan Jews do at the end of Passover that is called Mimuna. And Mimuna is basically an open door event at the end of Passover where the door literally is open for anyone to come in and eat together, and you prepare a whole insane amount of snacks, and it's usually mostly sweet stuff. And the idea really is for anyone to come in and share this moment. And the Moroccan Jews did it back in Morocco, where after Passover, where they couldn't go to their neighbors' houses and eat with them because it wasn't kosher for Passover. They opened the door in order to show people it's not that we had a reason that we didn't want to come because of you or because of anyone, but it was purely because of this holiday. And now we're opening our doors and our hearts back to you to show you that we want this openness and this and living together and being together. And it is so beautiful, and it is something that I truly believe in any way that I can, this idea of really anyone is entitled to eat, and anyone is entitled to good food and healthy food and enough food. And it is on us to find the way to open our doors and let people come in and be part of this.
Thank you. Susie, your thoughts?
Well, gratitude begets gratitude. So when we can empathize with our neighbor when we understand what's on his plate. I think that gratitude can help you feel more positive emotions, be patient with adversity, and it can help to fuel stronger relationships. So, when we prepare a plate of food, it's not just the food that we're serving. It's like when our grandmother fixes us a recipe, it might not be a cordon bleu recipe. It might be just something really simple, but what makes that food memorable and what makes us want to go back to that taste from our grandmother's house again and again is the love that she put into it. So the ultimate seasoning is love here.
Thank you. Araceli,
That's,
Leo?
I was just about to say that's what we always say in the kitchen when somebody was like, "Oh, that was delicious. What do you put there?" It's a lot of love. Yeah. I will say like the students when they go to the kitchen and cook and they are with the staff and they are learn how the staff do all the recipes and how fast they has to be doing that. The time is on the
It's always taken.
it always taking, yeah. So I feel like they learn this how you say gratitude of like how is the kitchen and how the food is being placed every day.
Yeah, for how hard the kitchen staff works, I think when they do these cultural family meals and they're back there trying to cook for 250 people and, different portions, and they're like sweating and not getting it done on time, and everything takes, I'll finish this in an hour, and it's like
And
5 hours later, they're still stirring a pot, like they do develop a greater appreciation for the CAF staff. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I would push back. Like a common assumption we have on this, I think, and this question is that food always brings people together. And I think in a lot of ways, I think it does, but I think you could also say, like, let's look at, to play devil's advocate, you just say pineapples on pizza, and I bet we could get into two camps in this room and be ready to fight each other, So the interesting question that I have, and I think that's maybe out there to be studied, is that we haven't really looked at, and I was looking at diplomacy programs when I kind of helped to name our cultural family dinners, gastrodiplomacy. I was looking at it, and this is offered as like a course offering in places. Sorry, my dog's, someone's at our door. But gastrodiplomacy is more about promoting your food and your cultures. It's less there's just not much information out there that has been studied in a scientific way about food in conflict regions and how food could potentially overcome this, or food. And I think I found one study, a grad student in Georgia, who has looked at conflicts there and how food played a role in that. And that's like the one academic paper that I can see. There's plenty of academic papers on food and emotions and food and health and mental health and food and like connection to people a little bit, but not in conflict. So it's an interesting area of study that if I was graduating UWC right now, that would probably be like, oh, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to study.
I think the first step is we have to do on the oh my God, what is the wild mushroom? Oh my God, that Susie, that you take in the woods, it grows there. Oh my God, it's a very fine mushroom. Oh my God.
Truffle?
Truffle, thank you. We have to go on the truffle fest that you offer there. But no, I appreciate that. I mean, thank you for your thoughtful comments on that, because you know we're the questions I'm going to be following up with now are again on that thoughtful line here, and that is, you know, the gratitude is there, you know, and you know, Susie, you touched on it, Araceli, you touched on it, and uh, I'm not sure who BF Fountain is. You know, the ultimate seasoning is love. Seasoning is love. What kind of food do you create for others that can tell them that you love them or care for them? What food is an act of love for you? And talk. We'll start with you.
Well, I thought of two things that were an act of love for me when it comes to cooking. The first one, I love anything that makes it. My catering is all about making things fresh from scratch. So we make all our breads, we make all our desserts, but I think that the fresh pita, when I make food and serve fresh pita, for me, that is such a big part of my childhood. You know, the pocket that you can open it up and you can fill it up with what you love. The smell of pita when it comes out is like nothing else. And going very closely with that, another big love for me to make and share with others is the Jerusalem bagel. As a kid, that was what I grew up on. It is a completely sesame covered bagel, very fluffy. It's very big. Usually you dip it in za'atar, the Middle Eastern spice. And for me, when I want to share my heart with people and what really means a lot to me, those are probably the two top things that I bring to the table.
Very good. Susie.
So, as a girl born in Appalachia, biscuits are the ultimate expression of love to me. Soft, warm, pillowy, versatile. They can encompass a slice of country ham, or they can go around pimento cheese. They can be slathered with sorghum molasses and butter. They can be drizzled with all kinds of things or topped with sawmill gravy. They can be tucked warm in your pocket, or if you should happen to leave one out on the counter for too long, you can throw them at the cat to get the cat off the table, which is just what I was about to do. Anyway, biscuits are a gift of love, I think.
Very good. And Liam and Araceli.
For me, I was just telling Liam, like, I see it as a action. Like, it is not what you're preparing, it's like you doing it for somebody and the care that you're putting for that. And I feel like that is the love that you will be sharing too.
Yeah, the action of cooking for someone itself is an act of love there, like trying to pair something up with what you think they might like, that you might love, or share, you know, something that you've taken a risk creating with someone, you know, like, oh, hopefully they'll accept accept this challenge that I've tried, or this new thing that I've done. So I do that. But I think if I was pressed, Araceli and I think we spent, you know, 9 years living in Mexico. So like if it was, you know, part of our daily life or our weekend life every Friday to host a carne asada, where we'd throw, you know, some meat on the grill, make homemade salsas and homemade tortillas a lot of times, and guacamole. And then we've just learned all kinds of other different amazing side dishes to, you know, or other guisados, I guess, stews that they call them for our vegetarian and vegan friends and stuff. So I think that is probably, you know, it speaks nearest and dearest to me, is that kind of vibe.
Thank you. I'm just going to read a couple of the statements in the chat. One is from Denise Moore. I like this idea that cooking is the alchemy of love. Sophia writes, when someone prepares food for you, as well as the food they offer to you, they are giving you their time, dedication, and their thoughts for you. That was beautifully written. All right. So one other question. I mean, well, let me ask you this. Are there any questions right now from anyone in the audience? Don't worry, I still have more questions, so you're okay. You're safe. But anyone want to share anything? But please feel free. But I'm going to go down to the next question is because Susie kind of touched on this. So, and is bringing in a little bit more to the food experience, and that how do food and music go together to create a positive, unifying culinary experience? Susie, can I start with you on this one?
Sure. Well, I think food and music are kind of inseparable. Food feeds the body, but music really feeds the soul. Or you can say it the other way around if you want to, depending on what is your first love. I had the good fortune of studying with the French chemist Hervé Tisse, who is considered the French father of molecular gastronomy. And when he had sort of finished his adventure with molecular gastronomy, when people started taking that in a different direction than his original vision, he went on to the next thing, which was called La cuisine note à note, or note by note cooking, in which he equated musical notes with flavors. So the way you build a chord is you combine musical notes. And if you take flavors and combine them, you get a dish, and then you combine those chords to form a piece of music, and those pieces of music to form a symphony, just the same way as you would combine dishes to form a meal and then eventually a banquet. So they build on each other in very similar ways. And for anybody who's ever thought about the idea of synesthesia, there's kind of an interweaving of the senses, and sometimes you can hear food, you can hear your tastes, you can see sound. It's fun to play with those elements and see, it's kind of a big old pot of gumbo. You throw it all in, see what happens when you've got all these things in the pot that you love.
Thank you. Tahoe, what about you?
Well, I have been part of a lot of different events where we have moved away from the traditional wine pairing between wine and food and moved a lot more into music pairing, because the music that you're going to have at an event really brings out so much of the flavors. So when we do different events, we always ask as well if there's live music, what kind of music. And we try to make sure that our menus really go with that kind of vibe and with the kind of music that is there. And I was recently first time in Mexico. It's always been my dream. And I always feel like people in Mexico have their own sort of music, the way they go, the way they walk, the way they talk. But having them share the food, you really got that as well. And it felt like a good meal feels like an incredible song. So I always feel that those go together really well.
And obviously, I'm thinking the Gumbo Dining Hall. Liam and Araceli, how was music play for you in that culinary experience?
Yeah, I mean, just from a personal perspective, like if you're cooking something, intricate or like a meal, like there's always a playlist. There's always something that you're putting on with it to accompany. But I think with my advisory group, when they come over to cook with us, or even the cultural family dinners, like there is always like, okay, what's the music we're gonna put on? What are we playing? Are we playing some French hip hop? A week and a half ago, and kind of exploring that. Like, what music do you like to listen to when you're cooking at home with your family, or when your family's having a celebration? And the whole thing comes out on a much larger scale with like, we've got the PAN, the Pacific and Asian national diasporas. They're doing their cultural family dinner next Wednesday. So we've got a busy weekend ahead of us, especially her. But it's always like some crazy playlist that they're putting together of awesome music that then ends up being, dancing, after dinner by a certain group, and even the group as they clean up, there's a lot of kids dancing around. And so you just can't really separate it when you're trying to share a cultural experience. I think trying to hit all the senses and hit that music and hit the visual appeal of a plate of food, or the national dress that the kids put on to wear and celebrate it, and then also the tastes and sound. So it's hard to separate those things when you're talking about a cultural experience, right?
Thank you. Liam Araceli, there's a question for you in the chat. I'll read it out for you. This comes from Sophia. I wonder how the children express their homesick emotions through food craving and at meal times when they are in the first weeks at UWC. What do they say?
They definitely share that we have like feedbacks of the students who say like, oh, I wish we can have this and this, and we always open. If they are close to me and they ask questions, like they tell me, I definitely add that in the menu, whatever they request for, and if we are available to do it, we do it, and they are very happy about that.
Yeah. I think, it's probably hard as they adjust to, some of the meals in the cafeteria that are maybe very different from where they're from, and the flavors are different, and it's, maybe a strong impression of culture shock as you get it. But I think they also then will get, their first Walmart trip. Or Amazon has made things better as well if you can't get those different spices. And then a lot of kids like learn to cook maybe for the first time in their life. Some kids can, come and like, oh, I've been cooking all my life and I love it. And other kids are like, I really want to eat this thing from home and I'm not going to get it, so I'm going to have to learn how to make it. And so it kind of pushes people to do that, to kind of break out of their comfort zones a little bit and try to do something new and different, and so that they can get that taste of home that they want. Other things though, it's not going to happen until you get home. Like you're not going to get that great street taco until you get to your corner taco stand,
Well, I can give it from the student side. Many years ago when I was a student, it was way before internet and emails. And I remember calling my mom, who was 7 hours ahead of me, at all hours of the night to ask for recipes that I remember that she would make. And my mom became so good at spitting out recipes at 3:30 in the morning when she was half asleep, and she would ask me like a week after when I called. She was like, did you call me and ask for this and that? But I remember that for me it was, we would talk about something in the day room, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I have to make you guys this and that. And I would go down to the only phone we had at Lanham and call home at 3 in the morning.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I mean, you guys have kind of touched on this, it's getting your hands dirty, getting the feet on the ground. So my next question is really kind of asking all of you to share with the audience, how do you craft an intentional, unifying culinary experience without spending lots of money, lots of time, or if you have little experience cooking? Tips and suggestions. So who would like to start? All right, Liam.
I'll go. I'll get it. Never underestimate the power of a potluck. That's what I would say. It's a wonderful. I think it just allows people to bring something of themselves to share. And that's a powerful experience. And if you're not a great cook, I mean, just being able to host, and then I'm gonna focus on one dish instead of, a 7-course meal, is probably less overwhelming for you, as well. And you could just focus on one thing that you really want to share. And I think that's a great thing. And if you have the time as well, as I've learned, like cooking with people, when they bring their recipe over and like, oh yeah, let's cook together. And like, I'd love to try your new recipe and learn how to do that, or figure out something on the side that I can help to accompany that. And I do that with students, but I think those are my 2 tips on that but the power of the potluck, it's a beautiful thing. And it makes a more powerful experience, because it's not just you giving, it's everyone being able to give, and there becomes kind of a better sense of connectivity in that.
Nice. I will add their casseroles for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that potluck, I agree completely that the beauty of potluck is not just if you can't cook, but it's actually inviting others to share a recipe that they like and then getting to taste a lot of things. But for me, it's also keeping it simple. I think that we are so used to these super fancy food shows with incredibly fancy ingredients and whatnot. And we think that food is really has to be very complicated with a ton of spices, with a ton of ingredients. And I think that the beauty of food is when it's really simple and letting the ingredients be the main character of the show. And just, you know, we said already, the main ingredient is love, and the main ingredient is even wanting to share. So bring it simple and bring it from the heart. And I think that that is all that really matters.
Susie?
Well, that's really all that needs to be said. But I would say really cook with the seasons. Take what is in season at that moment, because that's going to be the best food that you can find at that moment in any particular place. And if it's July, have tomatoes. If it's September, have apples, have squash. You know, potatoes are good most of the winter long, so you're lucky. Carrots are good most of the winter long. In the springtime, gorge yourself with those fresh wild greens when you can. And as Tal said, just treat them simply. You don't really have to do anything fancy. Just a little sprinkling of lemon juice and olive oil, as a little sprinkling of salt on any fresh ingredient. It's going to taste good. A drizzle of butter, anything is going to taste good. Or, you know, wrap something in bacon fat if you don't like it, like beets. You know, beets taste like dirt to me. So I soak them in bourbon and wrap them in bacon and drizzle them with butter, and, you know, and then they taste pretty darn good. Yeah, it doesn't have to be simple. Just use what you like and go with your instincts.
Awesome. Thank you. Denise, it's something. Oh, I thought this might come up. Sorry. Any questions from anybody? You know, we do have a few more minutes left. If anybody had any questions, comments, just want to be sure we get an opportunity. If anyone has a recipe they want to share or food not to eat, you know, play the devil's advocate. Good time. All right. Well, if you're thinking about our writing in, I just want to take this time to first and foremost, thank Susie, Tal, Liam, and Araceli for being here and taking their time out. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for joining us for this as well. We will be a follow-up email. There'll be a little bit of surprise in it. I'm not going to say anything more, so please take a look out for it, but you will find the recording. And if you have any follow-up question, there we go. I think there was a comment from Jocelyn. Thank you, Jocelyn. But if you have any additional comments that you would like to, or questions, please feel free to send them back through me. And I'll be sure they get on to our respective panelists. But otherwise, I challenge you all to do that gastro diplomacy, open up your tables, bring your loved ones, your family, and your friends in, because these are going to be some interesting times ahead, and I think the food will get us through it. There's no question. But thank you all for sharing this wonderful evening with us. And again, our panelists, thank you so much.